Call the meeting to order. We've had no regrets. We have one councillor who's going to be joining us by Zoom, Councillor Surratt. And as we do, invitation to stand and walk around if you need to. We have a former councillor, Donald Dowsett, who passed away. Donald was a councillor for 3 terms, and I think it's only fitting to extend our condolences to the family, for sure, and perhaps have a moment of silence for our departed former councillor. Thank you. You all have an agenda? Anybody have anything to add? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved as presented. Any conflict of interest declarations? Anybody who has any conflict can declare now on any of the items, or they can wait until the item comes up. And see none. So we've kind of moved one item because we have, they're going to be on. We have a couple of people that are joining us from Elemental and WSP, and we're going to go for decision on that one item, and that's the first reading development agreement for the Wedgeport Wind Farm. Now, we had a PSC meeting, Planning Advisory Committee meeting, and the recommendation of the PSC was to recommend approval for first reading of this. So I guess what we would need is somebody to make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So are there any discussions or questions? There's an attachment, if anybody has any questions. Sorry, that was behind, sorry, Councillor Sonia, that was behind my iPad, I couldn't see it.
Yes, thank you, Warden. There on the page 4, on the financial analysis and discussion, I'm going to read a couple of sentences here. It says the amount of revenue for the municipality generated through the Act is calculated based on a formula and is collected on an annual basis once the farm is commissioned and operational. Total nameplate capacity in megawatts times wind turbine facility tax rate, which is what we discussed with our CEO Alain just the other day. However, there's seems to be a conflicting sentence down below here. It says the total amount of the annual revenue generated for the municipality through the Wind Turbine Facility Municipal Taxation Act of Nova Scotia is subject to change based on the actual amount of electricity generated on an annual basis. Are those two conflicting remarks?
Unfortunately, they can be seen as conflicting. And I know in an initial presentation we talked about that it could vary with electricity, but the actual legislation talks about nameplate capacity, which is the capacity of the turbine to make electricity. So at the end of the day, the calculation is not how much it operates, not how much it generates, but how much it's capable of generating. So if it goes up, lower, or higher than that nameplate capacity, it does not change our revenue. And that's evidenced by other agreements we've had with the Pubnico Point Wind Farm and other wind turbines, which that's exactly how it's calculated. If it's a 1.8 megawatt turbine, multiply by the rate. If it generates more than 1.8, good on the wind turbine developer.
Yeah, well, that's what I understood, but it's just with that last sentence I read, it seemed to conflict with the, with that first explanation. That's
I would say that a final would not have that. I think it was just a transition of information from one draft to the next.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do just have a comment on not on process so much, but on the fact that we have a draft development agreement. And so a draft development agreement means that a copy has been provided to Elemental, Elemental Wind, as well as their partners to determine whether or not that legal agreement makes sense to them. So they'll have it legally reviewed. Our lawyer will also review it. There may be some minor modifications. A minor modification does not in any way change the process. We are satisfied based on what was provided that what will from WSP said it would include, it includes it. Whether there are wording differences or nuances that have to be changed, that does not restart the clock. It is in fact the process.
Okay.
Insofar as advertising and community engagement, we promised this at the PAC and at the public participation meeting. We said that we would take the time to go into the community one last time to provide any sort of information, questions, comments on the process itself, limited, of course, to the development agreement. We're not the developer, so we're not going to be able to answer development style questions. It's our meeting, not the developer's meeting. The developer has had 2 public session meetings prior. The second piece will be a mail out. The minimum requirement of mailing out is 182 meters from 152 meters from the, I guess, good guess actually, from the location of the development. Because the development spans such a large area, we just said, forget that. We're going to do a lot more, so we'll mail it to the areas of Melbourne, Pigneys Point, Comoes Hill, Wedgeport, Plymouth, Upper Wedgeport, etc. in that area. So there'll be a lot of people with a mail with a message that we will be looking at this development agreement. The tentative date, assuming that you pass the motion that you've made right now, is January 18th. And so we'll obviously be making ourselves available to the residents before that date in case they had any last minute questions or concerns. There's a much more thorough process there, but I think I wanted to focus on, the process of the development agreement as well as the public engagement side. Are there any questions about that?
I don't see any questions. So there's a motion on the floor to accept first reading. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. So for John and Will, you can stay for the meeting if you want. Or you can leave. Oh,
Thanks. So I take it we just passed through first reading. Is that what?
Correct.
I did? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
okay. Okay, the next item is presentation. We have a presentation on EPR from Gus Green. And Gus, if you want to take that, okay, your mic is on.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me this evening. I know you have a full agenda, so I appreciate you giving me a few moments of your time to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart. Any of you who had the opportunity to attend any of the virtual presentations that were put on earlier this fall by Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities will recognize these slides. I took their presentation of some 20-odd slides and whittled it down to about 10 that I thought were the most important and most relevant for you guys. And I'll run through those slides fairly quickly, so we'll have time for me to answer any questions you might have about EPR, what it is, and how it might affect the municipality. So specifically, we're talking about EPR for PPP. Now, what in the world does that mean? For about 20 years now, our residents have had access to curbside recycling here in the municipality. But for that period of time, the municipality themselves have been responsible for paying the cost of collecting that material and then paying someone to process. What EPR does, or extended producer responsibility, shifts the burden for that cost onto industry, the people who actually put those products into the marketplace. And when we talk about PPP, what that means is paper, packaging, and packaging-like products. But it's everything that you currently find in your blue bag. So all those materials that you put in your blue bag now, most of those, or the vast majority of them, will be covered by these programs. But again, the big change is it's no longer your financial responsibility, it's industry's. And one of the things about this type of program is it's designed that it encourages industry to put out products that are more easy to recycle. If you make them responsible for end of life of their products, then they'll be hopefully a little bit more concerned about what products they're actually putting into the marketplace. So just to recap, I've been the manager of WasteCheck now for more than 20 years, and I feel like I've spent at least half of that talking about EPR. And in fact, we had a provincial committee that was working on this for a very long time that I was fortunate enough to sit on. And it was made up of municipal folks such as myself, people from Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, people from Environment Nova Scotia, and people from Divert Nova Scotia. And we were charged with developing a blueprint, a framework of what EPR should look like in the province of Nova Scotia. And we did that, and we gave it to the province back in 2019. And finally, this August, they've finally come forward with legislation to move forward on that, which is good. Now that they've finally done it, we're looking at a fairly aggressive timeline to bring it into play, and we'll touch on that here shortly. The estimate we've been using is that it's going to save Nova Scotia municipalities between $20 to $25 million a year. I think that's quite conservative because we've been using the same estimate for at least 10 years now, and things have gotten just a little bit more expensive in case you haven't noticed. So I think that province-wide, that is very conservative. So who are the key players in EPR? Well, first of all, it's to producers. And the producers, and again, that's to people who make the products and the retailers that sell them. Those are the people that are going to be responsible for paying the cost of the program. But it's not practical for each one of those businesses to try and tackle this on their own. So what they do is they appoint a producer responsibility organization. Someone that's going to be responsible on industry's behalf to manage the program, to collect the fees from its members, and to make sure the material actually gets picked up from everybody's curb and gets processed. It's most likely, I don't think it's been officially announced, but it's been certainly unofficially announced that an organization called Circular Materials is going to be the pro for this area for Nova Scotia. They're also going to be the pro for New Brunswick, who's also going down this road as well. Our first indication that they were likely going to be the one is the fact that a fellow by the name of Jeff McCallum, who was the CAO at Divert Nova Scotia for quite a number of years, kind of unexpectedly left Divert earlier this year and announced he was taking position as Atlantic Canada head of this organization. So it all makes sense now as to why he left. But I think that's good news for municipalities because we have a long relationship with Jeff. We know him quite well. We have a great deal of confidence in him. So it makes it a little easier going forward knowing that we're going to be dealing with someone that we have a long history with. So that's good news. The provincial government obviously plays a role here. They're the ones who mandated industry to do this. The other thing that they'll be responsible for doing is setting targets. So industry won't just have to recycle. They'll have targets they have to hit about percentage of material recovered and actually turned into new products. And whenever there's this type of system in any of the other provinces in Canada, there has to be a third-party oversighted administrator. And it's been announced that Divert Nova Scotia will be that administrator here. And basically, they're just responsible for overseeing the system, for data collection, making sure industry is doing all the things that they're supposed to do, making sure that the program is working the way it's supposed to work. And obviously, the municipalities and the regions of the province will have a role to play since we're the ones who have been collecting the material and getting it done for the last 20 years. So dates and timelines here. So again, as I mentioned, August of this year, they finally announced that we were moving ahead with EPR. The first big landmark is January 1, 2024. That's the date by which all of the municipalities in the province must declare their intent. Are you going to be part of EPR or are you going to opt out of EPR? We have not heard of any municipality that's interested in opting out. There are a lot of good reasons to stay in. There are very few reasons not to participate in it. That is also the date where the industry has to announce officially who their pro is going to be. And again, we're pretty sure that's Circular Materials here. The next big date is about 10 months later, October 1, 2024. By then, the pro has to have consulted with every municipality in the province. They have to put together a readiness report, a sort of a snapshot of how they're going to make this transition, because it is a big transition for them to be accepting this responsibility. And they have to provide that report to Divert in October of 2024. Showing that how this is going to play out, and that they are indeed ready to make the transition. And then in December 1 of 2025 is when full EPR comes into play. And that's when you will finally start saving some money. And again, just on that readiness report, and again, it's just how are they going to take over? Because right now you've got all the different municipalities and regions collecting this material. You've got a bunch of different processors around the province who are processing it. So the pro has to figure out, are they going to be collecting material? Are they going to pay municipalities to collect the material? Who's going to process the material? So there's a lot that needs to be done in a fairly short period of time. Regulation overview, and again, the key thing here is that they've got to have it ready to roll by December 1, 2025. And that's the key date for us. And again, Divert Nova Scotia, as the administrator, is supposed to be watching to make sure that they're on track to do that. And I mentioned opt-in and opt-out. We're certainly encouraging all of our municipal units to opt in. And as I mentioned, we don't think that there's anyone in Nova Scotia who's thinking about opting out. If you opt out, essentially it means you're going to keep doing what you've been doing for the last 20 years and pay for it all yourself. And that really doesn't make a lot of sense if there's another option available to you. So contract negotiations, each municipality has the right, if they want, to negotiate with the pro on their own individual terms. We're strongly recommending that you do it as a regional approach, as the six municipalities that make up WasteCheck, rather than doing it individually. And quite honestly, in Nova Scotia, we're really kind of doing it sort of all together. And Nova Scotia is a unique case. In any other jurisdiction where industry has come in and implemented this type of program, and New Brunswick, our neighbor who's going down the road at the same time, is a perfect example. Some areas of New Brunswick have curbside collection. Some areas have depots where you can take your material and drop it off for recycling, and other areas have absolutely nothing. In Nova Scotia, 100% of residents have access to curbside collection, and industry's never come into a jurisdiction like this before where we have a 20-year track record of doing this. So Nova Scotia is a bit of a different kettle of fish, if you will. And we're constantly talking on a provincial level, and we're not going to see any municipality go into this on their own unless they absolutely insist they want to. We're kind of taking a team approach to it here in Nova Scotia. So as part of that declaring your intent, there's a lot of information that has to be provided to Divert Nova Scotia by January 1. WasteCheck is working on that on your behalf, and we have been ever since the legislation was announced back in August. In fact, it's pretty much ready to go. We're just reviewing it and expect we'll probably submit it on your behalf next week. There's going to be a lot of other information that's going to be required over the coming 24 months until EPR is fully up and running. But again, we're here to work on your behalf to do that. And again, our provincial group, the priorities or municipal priorities group that we call it, has worked on this file for a long time, and we expect to be very engaged in the next 24 months as well. And I think that might have been my last slide. Again, so this was just an overview of what's coming and how it affects you. And the most obvious ways it's going to affect you is in avoided costs. Right now, you pay Scotia Recycling to process your material. As of December of 2025, you will no longer be responsible for paying that. It'll be industry's responsibility to pay. Whether or not it'll be Scotia Recycling that's doing it, we don't know. But whoever's doing it, it's no longer going to be your expense to pay. The cost of collecting recyclables will no longer be your responsibility. So you can, if you choose, just decide, nope, we're not going to collect anymore, and it'll be up to industry to figure out how they're going to go to every civic address in your municipality and collect that material. Does that make sense for you? Probably not, because you're still going to be paying your collector to go to every house and pick up their garbage and their organics. So it makes more sense that you negotiate with them to get industry to pay a portion of your costs, that would be attributed to recycling. So for argument's sake, if your hauling contract is $400,000 a year, probably you'll be able to get industry to pay $100,000 of that or something. So we're looking at fairly significant savings for the municipality, and it's not just a one-off, it's going to be ongoing. So you'll be avoiding the fees associated with collecting recyclables, you'll be avoiding the fees associated with processing, and additionally, you will likely be paid a certain amount, probably like a dollar value per civic address, for the cost of education surrounding blue bag material. So some of the work that WasteCheck has been doing for you, you should get some money from industry to help pay for some of those costs. So that's my 10-second overview. Now I'd welcome any question you guys might have about how this actually works on a day-to-day basis.
Anybody have any questions?
I knew I could count on you.
Councillor Saulnier.
So thank you, Warren. This is, I guess, for the public, because I've been asked the question many times.
Mhm.
Is this cost going to be transferred to the consumer?
No. The fees that, and I'm not being flippant, we put a lot of work into this and a lot of thought into it. The fees that are charged on these products and charged to industry are minuscule. Typically, we're talking about fractions of a penny. And as part of our work when we were looking at a framework for EPR in Nova Scotia, one of the things we did was compare prices of products right across the country to see if, jurisdictions that had EPR, if that box of craft dinner cost a penny more because they had EPR, and the answer was no. There's no difference in the cost to major retailers right across the province. So what that actually means is that our residents have been paying the fees for many, many years. You've just never been getting the service that you're going to get, or the funds that you should have got. So you've been paying the fees a long time. You're not going to see more fees.
Thank you, guys.
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. Counselor next to me just pretty well took the question, but I have here industry will pass on the cost to the consumer, because you say that they have been paying these fees for a long time.
Correct.
Where are these fees going?
Industry still has them.
Industry still has them. So
Yeah.
chances are industry is not going to lose one way or another.
Oh, no. But that's the thing. It's not going to be a new fee. It's a fee that you've been paying for a very long
But
time.
chances are that fee will go up a little bit. Because if
Unlikely.
they've had some money and still have, they're going to want that portion that they've been collecting all
So
this time.
80% of the population of Canada already lives in jurisdictions that have EPR. So adding less than 1 million people onto the program, I don't think they're going to have to increase their fees to cover the cost. It's entirely possible, I suppose, but it'd be universal across the country. It wouldn't just be Nova Scotia that we'd be paying it.
I hope it works as good as what it's planned out to.
Me too.
Honestly do. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Come on.
CL.
I want to talk EPR.
I did have a question about, I know this has been thought out, but I'd like to hear it from you, is if these businesses are responsible for the cost of recycling, there must be some measures to have them not switch their products to garbage, because then that would become our cost if
Right.
they chose to not put something that was recyclable and choose a
Correct.
garbage associated.
Yep.
So what controls did they consider when?
So in actuality, things that go in the garbage are considered as part of this as well. And in fact, things that are not recyclable, for example, chip bags are garbage. industry pays a higher fee on chip bags than they would on something that's recyclable, which is why actually now in British Columbia, you're seeing chip bags being introduced into the recycling program. And again, it's one of the nature of this type of programs. It drives industry to make things more recyclable.
Thank you.
Councillor Danton.
Okay, just to wrap my head around this. So if I order a duck call from a U.S. company and it comes all packaged, I almost need a hacksaw to open the packaging of plastic, all that stuff. So how does that, like it's been shipped to me from the U.S. So how does those fees correspond to that product that comes to my door?
Right. And that's a good question. And it's one of the major challenges, or one of the challenges, is what they call freeloaders, the ones who aren't paying into the system. But again, it's industry that's responsible for collecting the fees and doing the processing. So industry is pretty good at policing itself and chasing down its own members or its own colleagues that aren't participating in the program. So, and again, it's important to remember that this is not a new concept, that we've been doing it in most of Canada for a long time, and they've been doing it in Europe for even longer. So there are some of the challenges with it, and one of them is things like that, where you order not so much packages from the US, but if you're ordering them from China or somewhere like that, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But again, it's part of the system, and these systems evolve. I mean, they've had it for almost 20 years in Ontario now, and they're still working bugs out. So it's not something that first day it's going to be perfect, because nothing ever is. And it's going to always be evolving and getting a little bit better.
Okay.
But you did identify one of the challenging areas of it.
Councillor Saulnier.
Thank you for allowing me to ask a second question. On the same line, I did a little bit of research, whether it's accurate or not. Maybe you can verify and maybe you can't. But I was looking at the EPR on the computer just after we had our last meeting. And I was looking at the exact data on the rising cost to the consumer. And they had a 0.6% increase at a grocery store, which is 60 cents on $100. And that's not very significant. Is that number significant to you?
No, and I can't speak to that number because I haven't heard it before, but we certainly do not expect this to put any additional sticker shock on any product out there for the consumer. Again, just because on an individual product basis, the fee is so small.
Yeah, and this would be small. Thank you.
Anybody else? I guess I have it's a question, and again, it's kind of to wrap my head around how that's going to work. Like you're saying that the producer it might cost them like a part of a cent or whatever to make that. Right now, we pay for the recyclables. We pay, is it by weight? Is it, okay?
Mhm.
So how is that one part of a cent going to take care of what we pay? I'm sure we pay more than part of a cent per item that's in that bag.
Mhm.
How is that going to save us money? We're not going to pay any more. Anything?
No, so I think now you pay, I think it's somewhere around $90,000 a year to Scotia Recycling to process your material, and that's something you're not going to pay in the future. But in recycling, it's always a volume business. If you've got 2 boxes of Kraft Dinner, it's really hard to recycle them. But if you've got 2 million boxes, it's a heck of a lot more cost effective to do so. And industry's been doing this for a long time in the rest of Canada, and they seem to have. The fees seem to work for them. And again, part of our whole doing that framework thing back in 2019, and the years before that, there was a lot of consultation with industry and with other jurisdictions. And one of the things we heard, and again, this is really aimed at the big producers and retailers, and they're all like, yeah, okay, EPR, yeah, no problem. Their only thing we got from them is, please make your program consistent with the rest of Canada. Don't do something weird and different in Nova Scotia. Just make it similar to the other programs so they don't have to, reinvent the wheel. And that was their only request. Other than that, I was like, yeah, whenever you guys are ready, we're ready.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's no more questions, I don't see anybody else. I want to
Oh.
thank you, Gus, for coming, for sure. Very interesting, and it's a program that, like you said, has been on the books now for a long time,
Long time.
and they finally moved on it.
They
So,
did. And I just wanted to say again, thank you for your time. But also, if questions come up in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I mean, WasteCheck works for you guys, so
yes.
reach out to us anytime.
Okay.
Thank you very
again.
much for having me.
Okay, we'll move along. Oh, perhaps, yeah. Go ahead. We have a special guest in here.
Yeah, we have a
in the
special
building.
guest. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just introduce for some and introduce Andrea Hislop. Some of you have met Andrea before. She's our municipal advisor. I always get her name wrong because I knew her before she picked up a new name. So hopefully I got it right. Anyway, worked with the AMA for many years before she became a municipal advisor. So myself personally have worked alongside Andrea indirectly through the AMA and also through the province. So I send a lot of questions her way, and usually the ones that intentionally try to trip her up, just to keep her on her toes. But she's been more than kind to do the tour of municipal councils across her her area, which is predominantly Southwest Nova. I'm not going to say exactly where because I don't remember. But it's been a really, really good addition to their team, and I'd like to welcome Andrea here, and hopefully there'll be some learning going on one way or another here with her presence.
Okay, we'll move along. I see the next item is the recognizing Argyle. We have some minutes, and I think I'm going to move to the minutes before we do that. And the minutes, adoption of minutes, November 23rd, regular council minutes. There's an attachment. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as presented. Recognizing Argyle, does anybody of our councillors have anything that they want to bring up? I have Councillor Boudreau.
Thank you, Warren. I'd like to mention a few volunteers that work to set up a Christmas tree at the breakwater. It seems like it's never, it's not a one that's publicized or whatever, but these volunteers set up a Christmas tree at the breakwater. And I just want to mention, like Victor LeBlanc, he's the one that's in charge. He's also got Vernon Pache, Tommy LeBlanc, Neil and Leo LeBlanc, and Aline Cormier and Sharon Southern. Just wanted to thank them for their volunteer work around the breakwater. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dottimo.
Thank you, Warden. I guess on that same note, the West Side Improvement Society with their the Christmas tree, the buoy tree at Dennis Point Wharf, and also the gingerbread house at the museum. So thank them and their volunteers for again, putting up these really, really nice community things. So it's always a pleasure to come in from fishing at Dennis Point and see that Christmas tree. For some reason, it kind of makes you feel like you're home, which you are. So,
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor, and that for saying that was one of what I had on. Also, the other evening, there was a great evening put on up at the Nikhil Home for Special Care by a lot of the staff and a group of volunteers. The residents really enjoyed themselves. Santa Claus was there along with his elf, and it was a good night for everyone. And a lot of people were talking about it, and it was a lot of fun. So shout out to the Nikhil Home and their volunteers and their staff.
Yep.
Thank you.
I don't see Guy. It must be. Councillor Saunier.
Thank you, Warden. I'd just like to give a shout out to our own Recreation Department for putting out the meals in the Christmas stockings. It was a hit, it always is. Great job. Thank you very much.
The meal was held at the Club of Hadja.
Yes.
I worked we served 200 plates in about an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it took us a lot longer than that to prepare it, but and it was takeout. It was all takeout. And the Recreation Department had it set up where when they would call to register for it, she would give them a time to be there, and it just flowed. We were all done within the hour to serve that. Deputy Warden.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, I didn't attend the Tusket Christmas tree lighting this year for the first time. I haven't missed very many since we've been doing it, because I attended the one in Quinnen this year, and it was unbelievable how many people were at that hall. The hall was full, lots of kids. I don't know where all the kids came from. I didn't realize there were that many kids in Quinnen, but, well, they weren't just from Quinnen, but there were a lot. It was very well attended. It felt like, it reminded me of like old fashioned times, like when I was a kid and how many people used to go to those events. It was really nice to see. Thank you. It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
I ended up going.
At
You
the
had
Quinnen
just
one?
you had just left. I
Yeah.
went after the one in Tusket.
Did you see how many people? It was
Pardon me?
unbelievable
How many people? Oh, yes, a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was noisy.
Yeah.
Something, Abrams River has a community tree as well, and at the old schoolhouse. And last night was the lighting of the tree, and again, it brings the community together. There was a lot of people, and we had hot chocolate and Christmas music, and people brought cookies and whatever. So it's usually when we have that, there's a lot of people from the community that show up. Okay, if there's nobody else, we have the warden's report, which is attached. Anybody has any questions? Committee reports. Does anybody have committee that they've attended that they want to report on? Deputy Warden.
I'll just report on the Mariner Center Expansion Board. There were the public engagement sessions that happened over the last couple of weeks, and I was able to attend the ones after work in the evening, late afternoon, evening. They were well attended. The presentations were excellent. I went to the bigger meeting till 6 o'clock because we had another meeting, but we're collecting feedback right now that everybody kind of gave at those sessions, and that will be shared with us to kind of know what we'll do next steps. They're still accepting feedback until tomorrow. So there is, you can go on the Mariner Center website, and it's anonymous, and you can give any feedback that you would like, and everything will be compiled after tomorrow. Can I report on another committee?
can report on the
instead of just
committees you
going through? We had a doctor recruitment meeting yesterday, actually, and it's unbelievable how well they're doing. They're doing really well. They said they've had five times more site visits in the last 5 months than they've had in years, because it's licensing. Some of the regulations have been kind of relaxed because we have a lot of newcomers. So because of that, we have more doctors than ever coming and visiting and liking our area. Family medicine is still the biggest area that we have deficits in, but we are getting more and more doctors all the time. We're doing really, really well. And I know a lot of that, Scott, you were at the meeting. A lot of it is confidential, but I never know how much to share. But I just want you guys to know that every time we leave that meeting, you feel really good about what goes on in that committee. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Boudreau.
Thank you, Morgan. I'm on the Police Advisory Committee, and a lot of people are complaining about speeders in every community, and they know about it. They're working on it. And also, I just want to let you guys know, and the public know, that there's going to be recruiting police officers is going to be a lot easier than prior years. There's going to be incentives. So just to let you guys know that they're working on getting more police officers, and that they're short-staffed just like the rest of the world, I guess, the rest of the workforce. So they're working on it. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no others, we'll move on. We have the staffing reports. These are reports that show up. This one here is, we have the building permit report, which is an attachment. Anybody have any questions? CEO.
I did have one important thing to add under staffing reports. Tomorrow is my daughter's 16th birthday. So I want for everyone on the road to be vigilant.
Speaking of speeders,
That's why they're
that this could change things dramatically for the municipality of Argyle. I
Okay.
feel like it's a municipal issue.
and I think that's where the enforcement,
Yeah,
the
that's why they're
recruitment
hiring
came
more.
on.
Yeah, it was really, really well timed with the RCMP report.
Oh, yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Okay, for decision. First one is Article C50, Council Procedures. We've already had the first reading on these, and we've discussed it, but if anybody has any more questions, and then we'll need a motion to accept. So if anybody has any questions on this, you can ask them now.
So
It's moved and seconded. No questions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. The next one, item B, is community litter cleanup. This is the same thing. We had the first reading on this one. And if there's any questions or comments on this? It's moved. Moved and seconded by Councillor Boudreau. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Item C is extended producer responsibility, the request for participation. And as we just heard the presentation, it's moved and seconded. No questions or comments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Relief of taxes. We have two items here for relief. Oh, that didn't come up. Attachment. The first one is the assessment for the property in Wedgeport that has been demolished by Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And, pardon me? In West Pubnico. Where did I say Wedgeport? Oh, sorry. Yeah, West Pubnico. Dontramore, at the corner of Dontramore Road. So there's an amount here of $1,908. The assessment has been updated for the 2024 tax roll. So we need motion to exempt. We have two. Can we do both of them at the same time? And the second one is the assessment was a duplicate and has been deactivated, and that one is $24. So we would need a motion to relieve the taxes on those two properties. Moved and seconded by Councillor Sonia. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary reminder, carried. The food cycler service. If you remember, we had a presentation here on that, and they wanted to know whether or not we were interested in taking part in that program. So if you've all seen the attachment, I guess the recommendation is that we have different options. We can opt to partner with Food Cycler, $22,000 upfront. We can defer Food Cycler request for 2024-25 budget because there's nothing in the budget for that one right now. And we have option 3, we deny the request for the Food Cyclers. And I'm see Councillor Donaldson.
I'd like to make a motion, we accept option number 3, and I remember that presentation very well. It felt like we was at an info commercial
Exactly.
session more than a presentation. So I would like to make that a motion that we deny the request.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions on that? Oh, Jen. So if there's no questions, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, carried. We have a COA funding. This here we've already approved that, but this is just to make it formal. Formally have the motion on file. So it is, there was $25,000 to be billed to the East Pubnico Water Utility water users for emergency repair of the East Pubnico water tank. So we move that additional $25,000 be used from the East Pubnico water utility surplus for the purpose of the East Pubnico emergency water tank repair.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Bohr.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Warden. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. EPC member replacement. Oh, it lit up, but it went out.
It's Christmas, it's okay.
It was green. So one of the members of the EPC resigned, as you all know, and I guess now it's time to replace him. At the time, I guess they felt that it wasn't at the right time to do that. So there's a motion here that Carl Boudreau, one of our employees, his name be put forward as a nominee for the expansion project committee. And his name was submitted before, but he didn't make that. There was other people that were, yeah. So we would need a motion for that. Moved by Councillor Digdon and seconded,
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Bork. Any comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Correspondence, and for information, we have correspondence from the town of Oxford. And this is a letter to, if you've read the letter, it's a letter that trying to get the volunteer emergency service providers to be exempt from the carbon tax. Certainly a good idea, whether that would ever, but the municipality of Yarmouth has sent a letter, and this one here is from town of Oxford, agreeing with now I don't know if that's something that this municipality, this council wants to do the same thing, to have a letter there or not. I mean, it's not a decision, but Councillor Digdon.
If I may,
Yes.
I'd make a motion that we as well get on and send a letter from the municipality of Argyle.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any questions? So I understand it properly. This would be just like the fire departments. It wouldn't be every individual volunteer that, it would be just the providers, like the fire departments or whatever. So if there's no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. We have a thank you note from Here Society that we had given them some help with funding. We have, next item is the financial request, district community grant request, La Société Touristique Bontemps, District 9. And they're looking for, the cost of, it's 500, I see it there. So you move that.
Make a motion if they're looking for $500 for the Argyle Tourism Operating Department stakeholder they're having on January 23rd. The cost for holding the session is around $1,000. This grant would help. So I'll make the motion that we give them $500 from District 9.
Seconded by Councillor Digdon. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Agenda topics for next meeting or notice of motion for councillors. Is it funny?
It's funny, but I can't believe how fast you went through that.
I knew that's what you were looking at. Oh.
Oh, he has
We
to
got
start over.
we got to call the meeting to order again.
His hand is up. Oh, I was supposed to tell you. His hand is up.
So Guy or Councillor Surratt, you had something to?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just, since I've come in late, I had an appointment up here, so I was a little late getting in. I just wanted to know, you've probably already discussed this, or maybe you didn't, but I just wanted, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, was there any questions on what I sent out about the airport and no member from Argyle on the task forces? Does anybody have any questions or comments on that they'd like to me to bring back to the airport at our next meeting in January, if that's okay with you, Chair?
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Digdon.
Not so much a question, but I also, being as though we put a lot of money into the airport, I would like to see a representative from the municipality of Argyle on that task force committee.
Okay. I don't know if that's something that we can do, or I'm not sure how that.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Surratt.
The way I would think, maybe Anna can correct me, but I could bring that up at the meeting that we have in January. And again, it doesn't have to be somebody that's a councilwoman, but it could be a representative from Argyle. And I could certainly bring that up at our next meeting if that's so the wish of council.
C.A. Williams.
I mean, if council so agrees, certainly we don't require a motion, and maybe we don't desire a motion, because the decision is really the airport's to make. Whether we agree with that decision or not as owners is a different discussion. So I think that this can be done rather gracefully. I think that a phone call and a conversation with, is this possible? I did see the list. The list is impressive. It's a lot of really good people, none of which are elected, none of which are appointed, none of which are staff, which I thought was equally important, because we're invested in it. If there's people that haven't put a dime in it that are really passionate about it, I think that's a good thing. I think that Argyle has a lot of people passionate for the airport that would be more than willing to put their hand up if they thought that there was an opportunity to do so. Myself and Councillor Surratt can certainly encourage that on your behalf, if that's your wish.
Okay, that's okay with council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alain.
Okay, now back to agenda topics for next meeting and notice of motion. Anybody have anything to bring up? Seeing none. Any questions on question period? No, nobody question. So we have an in-camera session and it's motion to go in camera.
Motion to go in the camera.